big blow. Ukrainian special forces obliterated a massive group of Russians, deteriorated their defenses significantly and made them advance negatively. And also, there is a panic in the capital of Russia, Moscow, because air raid sirens started to sound. But more about all of this in just a couple of minutes. What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. And let's get straight to the point and talk about some ridiculous Russian propaganda. So, today we have this Chief Shaman of Russia. Yes, I was also very confused that I heard that we do have such title. But this guy basically he spoke with the spirits through telepathy or however they do it. And basically he saw that there was not going to be a nuclear war involving Russia in the near future. He did, however, mention that in case there is an aggression against Russia, Russia will be completely undefeated because we do have the biggest nuclear supply. All of this is according to Shaman speaking with the spirits, so take this information with a grain of salt. But basically he said that nobody will even dare to attack Russia, that is why everything eventually will end up in peace talks. And you know what? Probably this is one of the very first times when I can actually agree with the Russian propaganda, because I also do not see a nuclear war in the near future involving Russia, but still, I want to know what you guys think, so please let me know in the comments. And if you also think that there will be not going to be a nuclear war, can you please like this video and subscribe to my channel, because it means all of us will still be alive and I'll continue making these daily episodes. You can also follow me on Instagram to see how I live outside of YouTube, and I'll be sharing some memes with you. The link is down below. Now let's quickly talk about probably the most ridiculous statement that Putin made recently, and then I'll give you an update from the south of Ukraine where there's another video of the Crimean raid, and then we'll finalize everything in the east where a massive Russian infantry concentration of forces has been recently obliterated. And so yes, so Vladimir Putin was speaking in Valdai in a so-called forum, and he made absolutely outrageous statement. I'm not going to give you a country what he's talking about, I'm gonna replace it with this country. And also please, one more thing I'm asking you to do in the comments after this segment of the video, can you please guess in the comments which country he is talking about? So yes, the first thing he mentioned is that it is this country which was pushing its agenda on the others. And in case anyone, including individuals, do not agree with the policy of the state, this country will eliminate them because there is no freedom of speech. Putin also mentioned that this country was involved in the revolution in Ukraine, and this country started war in Ukraine. This country, it only wants to expand across the world. Russia here is only just protecting its values and traditions. So pretty much yes, please now lock in your votes, which country you think Putin is talking about, and obviously it will make sense that he kinda speaks about Russia. That Russia started the war in Ukraine, Russia started the revolution, all this kind of stuff, but no. He actually was talking about America. America started war in Ukraine between Russia and Ukrainians. Yes, but wait, there is more. The ridiculousness does not end here, because Putin mentioned that according to his intelligence, talking about Prigozhin's plane collapse, he said that it was not intercepted, but it was that all the passengers, including Prigozhin, they were drunk and high on some drugs, and they were starting to play with the hand grenades, and spontaneously one of them exploded inside the plane, causing it to collapse. Yes, this is the official statement and version of Prigozhin plane elimination according to Putin. I'm sorry guys that I'm stuttering a lot, it is just extremely complicated to keep this ridiculousness in mind and then to even say it out loud. I'm not that professional liar as somebody else. But okay, now let's talk about some serious cooperation between different countries. And so, first of all, Vladimir Zelensky arrived to Spain to speak with European Union members about the increasing air defense of Ukraine. And unfortunately, the meeting started off at the wrong foot right away because Slovakia decided to postpone military support to Ukraine. But eventually it did pick up, because Germany is pledging another IRIS-T and Gepard anti-aircraft guns to Ukraine. And then Spain itself also mentioned that it will help Ukraine with the air defense and also with the keeping the energy flowing for Ukraine during the winter. And speaking about the air defense, Spain will be sending 6 Hawk launchers to Ukraine to help them protect their sky. And probably one of the most interesting parts is that Vladimir Zelensky met with the president of Armenia, Nikol Pashinyan, who recently his country ratified the Rome Statute, which basically means in case Putin ever shows up in Armenia, he will be arrested. And even though not much significant agreements between Ukraine and Armenia has been reached, it is just a power move to show Putin that Zelensky is now also friends with Armenia. But okay, and now as promised, let me give you a brief update from the south of Ukraine, where Russians started to advance negatively, and then we'll finalize everything in the east. But first of all, let's make a stop in Bereslav, located in Kherson region, because recently, as a result of pretty much direct attack of a Russian missile, they were able to destroy the entire 4th floor of the local hospital. And unfortunately, there are injured and casualties. But Ukrainians, nevertheless, they were able to intercept 24 out of 29 Russian Shahed drones. And then we have another video by the Defense Intelligence of Ukraine, showing us more details about yesterday's Crimea raid, where Ukrainian special forces were able to land on the peninsula. And apparently, besides Crimea, they were also able to briefly stop on Kinburn Speed. They were able to engage Russians in combat activities, eliminating several of them, while unfortunately also suffering some losses. And also, whenever they were retreating, Russians were trying to pursue them in the Black Sea, with even including helicopters and aircrafts, but Ukrainians were able to escape successfully. And speaking about the very same area, according to the British intelligence, Russians might potentially put mines along the grain corridor next to Odessa and all the way to the European countries. So basically, whenever the next time Putin says that Russia is doing everything possible to restore the supply of grains in the world, just remember this statement. Just remember how much he actually cares. Next, to go closer to Zaporozhye frontline, and we have a pretty interesting video, because right here is the self-propelled howitzer of Russians called Pion, which stands literally right next to the impact zone of the previous Ukrainian missile. And Russians were like, well, yeah, Ukrainians can target this area, so let's stand exactly next to it. Guess what happened? Their howitzer and the forces along with it were destroyed as well. In addition to that, Ukrainians were able to destroy a pretty big group of Russian infantry located to the west of Inzhinernya. And as we refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Ukrainians reportedly were able to advance along Novoprokopivka. This settlement is located approximately several kilometers to the south of Robotyne, and this is so far the most significant combat area along the Zaporozhye front line. And Ukrainians, according to satellite images, were able to capture several more trenches to the south of it. And now Ukrainians trying to get closer to Novoprokopivka and to the south of this settlement, while Russians are advancing negatively, as they called it, and they increased their artillery attacks against advancing Ukrainians. But just overall, according to another report by the Institute for the Study of War, the defenses of Russians in this Orikhiv-Robotyne front line started to deteriorate significantly, which pretty much confirms the fact that Russians have to advance negatively, and the only thing they can do right now is to try their best to at least slow down Ukrainians. There is not even a single talk about Russians recapturing territories. And guess what the Minister of Defense of Russia, Sergei Shoigu, does? I almost forgot about you. So reportedly he is deliberately just emphasizing the efforts of those Russian commanders in the Zaporozhye front line who specifically push their forces to sacrifice themselves and just to stop the advancement of Ukrainians, and then those Russians who try to save the lives of their battalions and companies. Shoigu is basically just ignoring them. Because, this is exactly what they need to do in case Russians want to have some kind of success in the future. They obviously need people, but according to Russia this does not suit the propaganda. How can you talk about retreating soldiers? You can only talk about heroes who stand until the very last moment. And just whenever there is a momentary success of those Russians who do stand their ground and are able to slow down at least a little bit Ukrainians, this is exactly when Shoigu emphasizes these efforts, tells Putin that, look, this guy, he was able to achieve what we asked him, he is the hero of Russia. Basically Shoigu, as you can see, he does not care much about winning battles or even war at this point, he only cares about pleasing Putin. In both meanings of this sentence. And he obviously continues the narrative that Russians, we are protecting Ukrainians from Ukrainians on the territory of Ukraine. That's why we had to liberate Ukrainians from Ukrainians, from Ukrainians, from Ukrainians. But long story short, Alexei Danilov, he mentioned that, don't worry, fellow comrades, Ukrainians, whenever we actually, Ukrainians, I think I said like 20 times already. Whenever we will come to liberate you, there is not going to be any of these radical things that Russia is talking about. We're not gonna pressure you, we're not gonna put you in jail. You are our fellow countrymen. We do want to liberate you and your territories. So please, do not afraid, do not believe Russian propaganda. Help us fight against the invaders. And just overall, this entire statement by Alexei Danilov, it just makes sense, right? And well, just like with Putin's statement, I'm here completely speechless, so I just presented you with the facts, and you decide what you want to believe or not. But okay, now as promised, let's go to the east of Ukraine, where a massive group of Russians has been obliterated by Ukrainian special forces. But first of all, if you don't mind, just a quick stop on the territory of Russia, because in its capital, in Moscow, recently they were testing, quote-unquote, air raid sirens. Not too many Moscow citizens, they were informed about that this is going to happen, and eventually, obviously, there was a lot of panic. Our next stop brings us to another Russian city called Kursk, where recently, allegedly, Ukrainian drones attacked a local electrical power station, which was supplying the energy to the military barracks. Just once again, the precision of Ukrainian attacks versus Russian attacks, whenever Russians were attacking the entire power plant stations and leaving without electricity the entire cities. And here are yet Ukrainians, only deliberately targeting those military-related objects. And then in another neighboring notorious region, Belgorod, Ukrainians were also able to destroy another Russian howitzer called Hyacinth. But unfortunately the response of Russians was something as you would imagine them to do. So in a very high precision missile attack against Hroza, this extremely small settlement with only approximately 330 residents, so obviously without a doubt there was nothing military related right here, but Russians still decided to launch a missile attack against the local grocery store and a restaurant, eliminating as of right now, according to the General Staff of Ukraine, 51 its residents, which basically means every sixth person in this small village has been eliminated by Russians. And while Putin so passionately fights against regular Ukrainian civilians who he allegedly swore to protect from this bad Zelensky, Ukrainian soldiers actually make the progress along the front lines fighting against Russian soldiers. And right here, for example, is the almost 9 minutes compilation of the Ukrainian Battalion K2 fighting in the east, close to Bakhmut area. They're showing tanks combat footage, infantry, all the kinds of combat activities. The video is definitely worth watching, but unfortunately I will not be able to show the full version on YouTube due to still being censored by this platform. But if you want to support my work and also see fully uncensored episodes of The Russian Dude, please go ahead and check my Patreon. It only starts as little as $4 per month. This is the best way to support the channel. The link is down below and there is 1 week of free access for you to decide if you like it or not. Thank you so much. Next to go to the actual front lines, and Ukrainians reportedly were able to destroy a big infantry group of Russians along with their military vehicles to the west of Crimea. And according to the representative of Ukrainian military Ilya Yevlash, at this moment along Kupiansk-Svatovo-Crimea front line, Russians concentrated approximately 100,000 of its soldiers. They brought a lot of helicopters, tanks, other military vehicles and equipment, and they're trying to concentrate their forces for one next big attack, potentially happening in the near future. But as of right now, there are no signs that Russians will start advancing anytime soon. But still, please Ukrainians, be careful. And on the other hand, Ukrainian special forces, which were mainly consisting of elite snipers, they were able to destroy or even obliterate a massive group concentration of Russian infantry to the west of Bakhmut with absolutely pretty much almost no losses from the Ukrainian side. So as you can see, even though it is Russians who are concentrating in the east, it is actually Ukrainians who are making significant damages to the Russian infantry. Just to say the least, in the last couple of days this happened in Crimea and in Bakhmut. And as we once again refer to the report by the Institute for the Study of War, Ukrainians resumed their counteroffensive next to Klishivka and Andriivka, and even reportedly right now there are only 40 meters away from one of the main railways, which Russians are using to bring reinforcements from the south of Bakhmut. And as we take a look at this map, which shows us the changes in territorial control, we can see that indeed Ukrainians were able to advance a little bit closer to the south of Andriivka, north of Kurdyumivka, and then as we go to the north of Bakhmut, this is exactly how the front line has been changing in the last 24 hours. As you can see, both countries were able to gain and lose some positions. And ultimately, Ukrainians in extremely high precision attack were able to destroy using HIMARS 2 mine clearing equipment of Russians located in Berezove. So pretty much yes, as you can see, it is Russians who bring more and more reinforcements to the east, but it's Ukrainians who increase the number of eliminations. So pretty much yes, as you can see, it is Russians who are bringing more and more soldiers to the east of Ukraine, but it is Ukrainians, somehow, who are becoming more and more successful in the very same area. And obviously, let alone the south of Ukraine as well, Zaporozhye. This is where Ukrainians also resumed their counteroffensive, specifically next to Novoprokopivka, so we might see some potentially nice liberations in the near future, because after all, if you remember, it is only 6 to 8 weeks left until cold begins, and Ukrainians need to have a very good liberations before the winter period, where usually the offensive slows down. And no matter what, I will be always right here making these daily videos, so if you don't want to miss any of them, just please consider subscribing to my channel. It only takes one click. Thank you so much, patrons, for your support, and see you tomorrow.